Yeah, you want me to, can I do that? Okay.
I am here to present on Complete Communities. My name is Chris Glashek. I'm the Chief Planning and Design Officer at Waterfront Toronto. I'm joined by Leslie Gash, who's our Senior Vice President for Development. For those of you not familiar with the term Complete Communities, it is a concept around building communities that have not only a multiplicity of people living in them in terms of age range and economic range, but also opportunities for work and opportunities for recreation. So a place where you can live all the different aspects of your life, moving away from the kind of mid-20th century models where everyone lived in one place, worked in another place, and recreated in another place. One of Waterfront Toronto's core functions is to develop comprehensive master plans that lay the foundations for complete communities. We've been delivering them really since the beginning, and we have added over 600 affordable rental units in the time that we've been working here, about 43 hectares of public parks, 26 kilometers of linear park and trail infrastructure, and now I've forgotten what my last one is. My screen isn't big enough with my notes. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Oh, well, yeah, and we've worked with quite a wide range of partners to start to build some of the social infrastructure that will make the neighborhoods thriving. One example is the community center that's now under construction in the East Bayfront. There are many challenges that this city is facing, not just the waterfront, that Waterfront Toronto is trying to address. For example, access to housing, I think you already heard that this morning when Meg spoke, is becoming a pressing challenge, not just in terms of finding places to live, but also affordability. I think the city's affordable housing wait list now has over 100,000 households on it, which is just an example of the kinds of pressures that our city is undergoing. I'm supposed to have notes on the screen here, but they're not working. Another one is ensuring access to community services, whether that be community centers, whether that be healthcare centers, all of the things that help make communities rich. And our challenge is making sure that those facilities are there at the beginning, because most of these communities that we're working on are being built from scratch, and you want people to move in, having access to that, not try to insert them later. Similarly, public space and parks is another challenge, particularly our downtown is facing, and we are struggling to keep pace with the rate of development in providing opportunities for people to get outside and to recreate. And those two are things that are very difficult to insert into a community after it's been built and really need to be thought of at the very beginning and incorporated from the start. And I just want to point out that the image on the upper right there on the screen is of the West Don Lands community, which Waterfront Toronto did all the planning for and built in collaboration with IO. And what you see in that photo on the left is a market housing building, and what you see on the right is an affordable housing building, and architecturally and functionally they're indistinguishable. And then in the middle is a great piece of civic public realm that includes public art and includes public amenities. And that's, I think, the essence of what a complete community is about, and it's absolutely what Waterfront Toronto is committed to doing and will be committed to doing on Quayside. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Leslie.
Hi again, my name's Leslie, and thank you very much for coming this morning on this very frosty and beautiful day. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the summary of our public feedback to date. So throughout the public engagement process, Waterfront Toronto has received feedback on the project. So the following slides that you'll see to come illustrate a few examples of supportive feedback and areas of consideration for materials presented in previous public consultations. So on the supportive side, under affordable housing, many participants supported having affordable housing, I think that's a no-brainer, and asked if the amount proposed could be expanded. On the social infrastructure space, there was an interest in more space for social services. However, more clarity was needed on what would be provided. So it's important to the participants that community facilities are kept open and provide flexible hours to cater to different needs and users. On the considerations feedback, for family units, participants shared concerns about small unit sizes and said it's important to provide family housing and family-sized units. For public realm, participants expressed support for innovations, for example, 3D mapping and GreenWave, that could improve the quality of life and public realm experience in the area. However, participants wanted to understand more detail on logistics, mechanics, and the implementation of proposed innovations. So the summary of the consultation feedback is publicly available on the Quayside TO website. So under summary of our evaluation results. So of the total 160 solutions proposed by Sidewalk Labs, 69 of them are within the complete community solutions. So a full list and detail on these solutions is included in attachment 2 of the discussion guide, pages 7 to 12. So within the 69 complete community solutions, Waterfront Toronto supported 61 of these. So support for certain solutions may change based on feedback from the public from today, support from Sidewalk Labs, who need to agree with Waterfront Toronto on the implementation terms, public policy priorities, and support from governments. Each solution is symbolized with a dot, indicating the evaluation results. A version of this graphic is also available in the discussion guide on page 9, so you can see how the symbol relates to the solutions themselves. And each of these solutions have been categorized into 4 varied degrees of support, plus a non-support, and we will discuss some examples in more detail. So under summary of evaluation results. So the evaluation summary results do not mean that Waterfront Toronto has approved moving ahead with the project or a partnership with Sidewalk Labs. The evaluation results will be used to draft the innovation plan for Quayside. Feedback from this round of consultation will inform our negotiations with Sidewalk Labs about an innovation plan. So, 20% affordable housing. This is an example of a solution to support, and when I say 20% affordable housing, that's what we had in the request for proposals, and that was our minimum requirement here. So this is an example of a solution to support with Waterfront Toronto's own investment. So 20%, so when we released the RFP, we noted our mandate for 20% affordable housing and asked the potential partner to work with Waterfront Toronto to develop a viable and implementable delivery model for mixed income housing. Waterfront Toronto has participated in the past in the creation of affordable housing and will continue to do so. Traditionally, this is done by setting aside land sufficient to accommodate the 20% and operated in public or nonprofit ownership, for example, in East Bayfront and West Don lands. In these cases, the city has found funding for the creation of affordable housing. Sidewalk Labs has proposed to provide 20% of the units as affordable housing defined by the City of Toronto. So, and that's defined by, they define affordable housing at or below Toronto's average market rent, called an AMR, by unit type. And 5% of these units will be deeply affordable. So examples of current average market rent for a 1-bedroom today are $1,374 compared to about $2,300 in the city right now. And for a 2-bedroom, $1,591 compared to about $2,850 in the city. So we're in discussion with the city, the province, CMHC, and Sidewalk Labs to work on the best affordable housing program we can get and to explore funding opportunities. Should we move forward, Waterfront Toronto will continue to ensure our commitments to affordable housing are met or exceeded, including providing affordable units in perpetuity, and in this case, on Quayside, bricks and mortar rather than just setting aside the land. So, under the social inclusivity portion of this complete communities, we have something called a care collective. So this is an example of a solution that we're going to support and advocate for government funding. So this is a dedicated space focused on health and well-being programming and services similar to a community hub. Community hubs, which exist in Ontario, make it easier for residents to access health, social, cultural, recreational, and other resources they need in one location. And this can be either located in a physical building or it could be through a digital service. The Care Collective is proposed to be in the STOA space on the ground floor, and there'll be a little bit more on that after, which can adapt over time to accommodate the evolving needs of the community. In Quayside, Sidewalk Labs plans to be a catalyst when it comes to promoting health and well-being, not a direct service delivery provider, and that's very important here. Waterfront Toronto has indicated support for the Care Collective solution and would work with Sidewalk Labs and our government partners in order to deliver this solution. I'm going to hand it back to Chris.
Thanks, Leslie. This is an example of a solution that Waterfront Toronto would support with Waterfront Toronto investment. The real-time digital map of the utility network is one of a series of proposals that would actually help improve the quality of maintenance in the city, and hopefully, and the intent would be, to reduce the costs of maintenance. So many of the public realm proposals that Waterfront Toronto is supporting in this plan, as well as some of the public realm that we have already built, involve more complex and more sophisticated systems than the average, and therefore they have even higher maintenance costs. We want to make sure that that is not just an additional burden that the city has to absorb, but that we find ways that maintenance can be achieved without taxing the city's limited resources. The idea of a real-time 3D digital map is that we can get finally some very accurate mapped technical drawings of where everything is in the city. Today, because some things that are in the ground are very old and haven't been surveyed, we don't even always know exactly what is where underground. So it makes planning for upgraded utilities and new services much more difficult. It also makes the work much more difficult when you send someone out into the field and they discover there's a pipe in a place where there was supposed to be empty space for a new conduit. So the work takes longer. The other thing that these maps can do with sensing is they can start to actually monitor the health of the utilities that are underground, and they can even predict when pipes are going to fail. So what that hopefully provides us with is the ability to say, you know, in the next 6 months, that water main is probably going to break, and rather than waiting for it to break and flooding everyone's basement and then going in and fixing it, we can actually send someone out proactively to replace that pipe before that damage has happened. The STOA is an example of a solution that we would support with regulatory change. The idea of the STOA is based on this ancient Greek concept of a sort of open market space. You might compare it loosely to a sort of St. Lawrence market, but the ancient STOA, as well as this proposal, had a much greater diversity of uses in them than we would typically legally allow to occupy the same space. So we might have a range of things from food production to light manufacturing, all able to come in and leave and take advantage of this flexible, reconfigurable space. There are ideas about flexible lease terms too, so you don't sign a 30-year lease with the nail salon, but in fact you have the ability for the units of retail or activation in the ground floor to change as the community changes, to change as community needs change, and be much more responsive in real time. And the STOA is also meant to provide additional quasi-public space because it's meant to be open to pedestrians, provides multiple ways to move through the block rather than being limited to city streets, and is really intended to create the kind of vibrant street life that I think was one of the key messages we heard really since the beginning of Waterfront Toronto of what people wanted to see on the waterfront. And now I'm going to give you an example of a solution that Waterfront Toronto does not support. These are the raincoats and the outdoor comfort system. Now, Waterfront Toronto supports the idea of outdoor comfort. As this particular system evolved, I think what we found was that while it does provide rain and snow protection, which is beneficial, it was hard to see that there were many comfort benefits much beyond that. So the impact was maybe not as great as we were hoping for. And at the same time, the structures themselves present potential obstructions in the public realm, which could impact the ability of people to use the public realm for the volumes of pedestrians. And in particular, it's not clear that there was a pathway to AODA approvability because people who are visually impaired might not be able to see these objects and might in fact encounter them as a disincentive to using the public realm. So for that sort of body of reasons, we didn't support this particular proposal as it was articulated in the MIDP, but we do think that there are still opportunities to increase comfort in the public realm, and we hope to evolve some other solutions for that as we move forward. So that gives you a sampling. This is just a kind of high-level sampling of all of those purple dots. They're all in the discussion guide, and you should feel free to refer to that. But I think this helps you understand the different levels of support and non-support that we're looking at for all these complete community features.
Thank you, Chris and Leslie. So we're going to dive straight into it. We have these 4 questions for you. These are intended as a starting point. If you want to go in another direction, that's totally fine. But we want to know in broad strokes if you agree with the results of the evaluation. Do you think they sufficiently address the challenges or not? Are there any solutions you'd like to see Waterfront Toronto prioritize? Are there any solutions that you're concerned about and why? And if there's anything else that you would like to share related to the proposal. So that, again, that's intended as a starting point. Those are the identical questions that are on the purple sheets on your table. If you want to talk about something else, that is no problem at all. So each table has a facilitator. Maybe just put your hand up, facilitator, at the table. So there should be one at every table. It looks like maybe there isn't one at this table. Oh, right, so mostly staff, but if you are at a table where no one stuck up their hand, maybe just move, redistribute yourself so that you do have a facilitator. And also Waterfront Toronto staff in the room, please put up your hand. So there's a handful of them as well, and if we need to move them from table to table, I will handle that. I will not be at a table, so I can kind of keep an eye on things. So for about 20 minutes, we want you to discuss, let us know what you think, and then we'll use the rest of the time here to hear both a summary of what is discussed at your tables, as well as any other advice you just want to share with the broader room with whatever time we have left. So that's our plan. I've got almost 1:45, so we're going to start now, and I'll call back attention at about 11:05. Yeah, one quick clarification, yes.
Thank you. I think we're going to be talking a bit about affordable housing at the table, which I know that's one of my concerns.
Correct.
There's 2 sets of figures that I'm just trying to reconcile.
Yep.
What we saw on the screen in the plenary was affordable housing at 24%.
Yes.
Here we had it at 20%.
Yep.
In the evaluation report that I've read,
Mm-hmm.
it says 20%.
Okay. So maybe, Leslie, could you clarify?
And also just one other clarification.
Yep.
Because the RFP didn't say 20%. The RFP said the minimum is 20%, but you want the provider to be greater than 20%. You said earlier that it said 20%. It doesn't.
Okay. So
I'm
you just want to clarify the discrepancy.
clarify what's kind
Yep, for sure. Leslie, could you just explain maybe the difference between those different
Yes,
sets of numbers?
that is a minimum, but what we're getting here, typically we just provide the land for affordable housing, but in this case, we're talking about actual order, and we're talking about a term of in perpetuity, which is something that's, that costs money and is a great thing to have in the city. So there definitely is a discrepancy. It's actually 23.8%, and that involves an encumbrance that we have from the development that's just to the west, Parkside, and we call it the Parkside requirement, so it's about 3.8%. We rounded it up to 24%, so that's what we're targeting here. So I know it's confusing, yeah.
You're still targeting that as a minimum, or are you targeting that as the final?
Well, we're still in negotiations with Sidewalk Labs. We've been having discussions with 3 levels of government as well. So we're working on a program right now. At this point in time, we're talking 23.8%. Obviously, we would love to have more than that.
So David, I'm going to suggest that Leslie, maybe you sit at that table to offer some further clarification.
We have 2 facilitators.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna get it. It's an important point. I take it as appreciated. It's an important clarification. I just want to make sure that everybody else has a chance to weigh in. Yeah. So we will get a clear answer to that. But I do want to get into the table discussions. And David, we will for sure. I'm going to work to get as clear an answer as possible as I can for you on that point, because I agree it's a very important clarification. Okay, everybody, that's been about 20 minutes. So I'm going to ask you to just wrap up your conversation, and I'm going to ask each of the facilitators to share 2 points from their discussion. So I'm just going to, thank you. So if you just want to wrap up, and maybe I'll start with Meg on the right. Everyone, if you could just wrap up that last point, because otherwise it's tough to hear. And Meg, maybe do you want to come up to the mic? Okay, everybody, maybe the facilitators at the tables can encourage everyone to just stop talking. Thank you. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to have each facilitator come up. They're going to share 2, max 3 points from the discussion into the mic, and then with whatever time we've got left, we'll just have an open discussion. We're going to be out of here no later than 10, 12 after 11, so we got about 5 to 10 minutes. So Meg first.
Great. We had a really good conversation. I would say the 2 points that were kind of clearest was a desire to see Sidewalk Labs talk a little bit more about how they might integrate arts programming, cultural parts of the cultural sector, both in terms of studio space, programming, and spaces like that. And there was also still more desire for a bit more clarity on how social infrastructure such as libraries, schools, childcare was going to be built in.
Meg, that's a good perfect example of how we want to do it. So next facilitator maybe come up, Naz or Kristen, and then Naz, do you want to be ready to come up after Kristen?
Great. So far, main points of discussion have been about concerns about the amount of affordable housing, wanting more, how much of that is deeply affordable, and concern that a lot of the talk about innovation is focused on the public space realms, but not on affordable housing models.
Okay. Thank you. Naz. And just line up, facilitation staff, maybe the next person can be ready to go. Okay, so we'll go Rehan and then Brian. Yeah.
Okay, we had a conversation about 24%
Just speak up a bit.
of the affordable housing. So, in our group discussion, the participants, they would prefer that the 5% deep affordable housing add to the 24%, not deduct from the 24%.
Okay. Good. 1 point. Great. Thanks, Brian.
Affordable housing continuing, the question came up. Of the overall project, what percentage is earmarked as accessible? And Waterfront Toronto said that's to be determined, I think, Jed. That's not a... For accessible. Okay, great. And another question, outside of affordable housing, if this MIDP may be rejected at that point designated on the PowerPoint, what would happen then? Costs that have already been absorbed, lines to restart. And Jed from Sidewalk said that there's a lot gained already from especially the public consultations, a lot of information and thoughts and feelings. Obviously, a new partner will be sought out, but there has been a lot that can be forwarded in that. I think I'll leave it at that.
Great, thanks. And Jed from Waterfront Toronto, just to clarify. Yeah, okay. Rehan next.
So the 2 main points we spoke about that I gathered from my table was affordable housing and social costs of affordable housing. So some of the members of my group spoke about the viability of short-term leases and whether they're good or bad. And I found it really interesting that a point of gentrification and social costs came up with affordable housing, and they would like to see an increase in that affordable housing. I also liked that we spoke about the concern with housing prices and how that is going to be resolved given the innovations in the public realm. Thank you.
Thank you, Rehan. Ben?
A portion of our conversation at the very beginning was spent discussing what constitutes affordable housing, and I think that from that conversation we circled back to it a little bit later on and said that there was a concern that it's not, we don't necessarily know who is going to live in this plan, and is it going to be primarily higher income professionals on the basis of what the cost of living is, so I think there was some concern in that regard. There was a desire also to see a prioritization for senior inclusiveness. And it was also clearly stated that affordability of rent and housing is only one aspect of the conversation, and that it's also about a sense of belonging in the community. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. And last, over to you, Corals.
So we had a great discussion at our table, and I could summarize into two themes. So the first theme is of equity, and there are a number of issues within that theme. So there is a question of the diversity of ages. How can equity address that? There's a question of gender equity and how design can enable or disable equity. And there's a question of attainable housing and how we choose to rethink about affordable housing, perhaps in that way. And the second theme is on flexibility. So again, a flexibility of design, of housing types, and of spaces.
So people were advocating for flexibility. Okay. Okay, good. So I got the about a 3-minute, 2.5-minute warning. So I got time for maybe 2 or 3 quick questions or additional comments if you didn't get a chance to weigh in or you talked about something at your table that didn't come up in the report back. I'll start here.
I have to say, I kind of feel like we're dithering around the edges.
Okay.
And I know this is, we've been divided into compartments, which I can appreciate, but I was part of a discussion the other night about human rights in relation and inclusion in the whole thing. And the big issue is data collection, Sidewalk Labs, Google, the whole thing. And we don't even seem to be talking about that today, but that to me is the elephant in the room.
Right.
And how data collection and the amount of data that is proposed to be collected, however it's done, and even with all the ideas about how to make it de-identified, is the word that was used.
Yep.
How it still really prevents inclusivity and disadvantages certain groups of people.
Thank you. And what's your name, sorry? Maggie. So if I'm hearing you right, it's a lot of concern about data collection, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, in this room. Yeah, in every room. Yeah, good. No, I just want to respond. We'll go to you next. Yeah. I just so you know, Maggie, that there is also, that is the explicit focus of the room next door. So hopefully you'll go there next. But notwithstanding that, we're happy to discuss it in this room as well. I'll go over here because you have something you want to say, and then to the back.
So what's curious about data collection is we're in the business right now of collecting data, right? So we are already participating in this program. So this overrated or overexploded kind of unrealistic view that they're going to use the data in a way that's going to be vulnerable to us, we're already vulnerable.
So I think this is a perfect illustration of one of the points that Nicole raised earlier on today, which is that a lot of people are coming to this project and this conversation with different points of view on different topics, and data collection is one of them. So I'd encourage both of you, especially, to go to that next room because you'll see some of the ways that Waterfront Toronto is thinking about digital, both in the context, Maggie, that you were sharing in terms of what are the types of controls that can be in place to manage some of the risks and to see if how you feel about those, whether you think they're sufficient. And for you, sir, I can't see your name, but if you think that there's opportunity in them or whatever, understand how they're thinking about that as well. So it is nested within everything. You're quite correct. It is cross-cutting through all, but there is an explicit place to talk about that. I'm going to go to the back, and then David, if we got time to come to you, someone's going to open the door any second on us, but I'll try to get back to you. Yes.
One of the things we talked about at our table was we've already talked about recreation, work, and living as a community. But I think the bigger or a big one that we haven't talked about is food. Both food bringing in and out of the community area, but growing food and creating urban spaces for food production, both on roofs and vertical farming. Really should be attached to this whole thing. It's a huge component of the zero emissions concept that we're trying to come up with.
Perfect. Thank you. That's perfect because it's exactly the kind of thing we're hoping to touch on in this last discussion, is just things that haven't come up yet. So thank you for that. David, I had you queued up, and then that may be it for us.
I appreciate the opportunity to have these discussions, but I'm feeling that at 20 minutes,
Yeah.
I mean, we have 143 solutions on the table. We saw the document for the first time maybe a week ago. That document refers to hundreds and hundreds of pages in the MIPP.
Right.
I would rather have us brief on something, have time to digest it, think about it, and actually then have a consultation.
Yeah.
20 minutes at a table to deal with that range of issues that we were just dealing with.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate that, and it sounds like some others feel the same way, and it's, for sure, it's 20 minutes is not enough time to get everything in your head and come up with an answer. And I do, not that this negates your comment at all, it's not intended in that way, but to remind you, Waterfront Toronto is collecting and actively seeking input up to and including, and I'm sure beyond, but for now, at least up to March 31st. And part of the intent with releasing the materials a week and a half or two ago was to try to give people a chance to get up to speed, but appreciate, David, that doesn't negate what you're saying. That's still in the moment. It is a lot to get through in a short period of time, but if you do feel you need more time to digest this and have a more thoughtful or informed opinion, I hope you'll take advantage of that extra month time to spend time with that and send emails into Waterfront Toronto or fill out there is also an online form which mirrors the exact same questions that you've got in front of you. But your point is taken. It's certainly, I understand the concern that it's just a tight time frame to absorb a lot and then somehow have an opinion.
Yes. Yeah, can I do that?